So it's been a hot minute since I've done a YouTube video, so I thought I'd just come back in with something super dry and boring. We're going to talk about this boot. So this is the Dynafit Ridge Pro, and I've been using this boot on and off for the last few weeks, and I've been pretty impressed with the performance. Now, this isn't a sponsored review video or anything like that. I actually went to a shop and I paid pretty much full price for this boot. So I've got no strings attached. I can basically say whatever I want about this boot, which is great. So for me, a boot like this in this category, which I would put in the free touring category, is really the boot that I'm reaching for most days when I'm out skiing. My boot of choice for last season was the Tecnica 0G Tour Pro, and I had a great time in that boot. Really feel like it pushed my skiing forward, which is pretty cool to say that. But I actually just got rid of that model. I actually just sold it to somebody via Instagram. The reason that I sold that was the pivot points down here were starting to get a little bit worn out, and I basically just wanted to try out something different. I did end up getting the new version of the 0G Tour Pro, and I haven't actually used it yet because I've been using this boot over the last few weeks. So let's talk about this boot and some of the things that have impressed me and some of the things that haven't impressed me as much. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a clearer idea about whether this boot might be for you. So let's start off with some positive things. Now, this boot has got an amazing walk mode to it. The flexibility that you have when you're walking is amazing. For a boot of this class and that skis this well, the walk mode is superb. Now, I would say that I don't generally find it to be that important to have a huge range of motion. The only time that you really feel that is when you're doing a long, flat skinning track. For example, going up the Argentière Basin, heading up towards the Col de Cristo or something like that. The rest of the time, I actually don't really notice if I can go all the way back, because I think generally when you're ski touring uphill, you're not really kind of doing these big strides that push you all the way forward. So the other thing about having a good walk mode is how easily it moves whilst you're actually ski touring. And I find that this boot actually is very fluid when you're moving it through that range of motion. So that's a really good bonus. Also, it's super easy to adjust this boot and change it from walk mode into ski mode. So you've got a lever at the back. It's very easy to unlock the walk mode and just one buckle on the side. And in doing that, it goes quickly and easily between ski mode and walk mode, which I found to be really good actually, coming from the 0G Tour Pro, which I found very fiddly, having to do the different buckles and having to do all the different levers and everything. This one is just a lot more simple when it comes to doing those transitions. The way that this boot skis is superb. I actually think it skis better than the 0G Tour Pro for me, and I've been using a much lighter liner in this boot as well. Now, I can't show you that liner because it's a prototype zip fit, which you will hear more about soon on this channel. But that lighter liner is about 300 grams, and in this boot, I think it skis as well as the 0G Tour Pro with the zip fit GFT liner. So that gives you some indication of how good this boot is and how that combo is working together. I'm shaving kind of like nearly 300 grams off my ski boot and having the same, if not more, performance. I have also tried this boot with the GFT liner in it, the ZipFit GFT, and it feels amazing. There's a lot more cork in the ZipFit GFT liner that I have, so that's actually going to just hold me in a little bit better, because I do find that actually the heel pocket on this boot is a little bit wider than on the 0G Tour Pro. The weight of the shell of this compared with the 0G Tour Pro is very similar. This is actually, it's not a super light boot, but it feels lighter on your feet. Probably to do with the fact that I'm using it with that lighter liner, but I just feel like there's less to it, which makes it more comfortable for climbing, and also, yeah, just kind of more maneuverable in tight situations as well. I really like the closure system on the front of the foot. This kind of boa style ratchet system actually works quite well. I am a little bit worried about how vulnerable these things are out in the backcountry, but I haven't had any problems with that yet, so hopefully it continues like that. What I would say about that is the way that it works is it really closes down on top of your foot and pushes you back into the heel pocket of the boot. When I actually figured out how the mechanism worked, I was pretty impressed with how they've actually engineered it and how like Hoji's designed this boot. And yeah, I'm just very impressed with how that works. The cuff strap works really well, and this plastic strap around the sort of lower portion of the ankle works great as well. But there are some downsides to this boot, so let's talk about some of those now. So for me, I find that the forward lean isn't enough, and there is no way to adjust the forward lean of this boot. So I feel a little bit upright sometimes. That's one of the nice things about the Zero G Tour Pro, is that you can adjust the forward lean by moving the spacer on the back, and you can also get the Raid Research mod, which then moves it another degree forward as well. I know a lot of people who find the Zero G Tour Pro very upright, so getting that modification for that boot I think is essential for those people. You can put like a spoiler in the back, and that makes a little bit of a difference, but it can also just change how the actual cuff fits around you. And yeah, it's kind of like, it's not really changing the angle of the boot, it's just kind of like pushing you forward. So one thing I did do with this boot just to raise my heel up a little bit was to put a 5mm cork heel raise in. So that's worked pretty well in like lifting me into a slightly more open position in my ankle, and it just feels a little bit better for me. That's something that I do with most of my boots. It just seems to be something that works to put me in a better ski position. So other downsides with this boot are the stock liner I think is pretty terrible actually. It doesn't really have anything that holds your heel at the back, so my heel is just kind of slopping around so much. Yes, a lot of the time, you know, boots like these, they just kind of make a liner that goes with them, and they just kind of assume that people are going to get some kind of aftermarket liner that goes in them. I would love to see boot manufacturers selling these boots without those stock liners, and it's something that Technica have been talking about doing, and hopefully they're going to follow through with that, because a lot of the time those stock liners, they kind of get ripped out, somebody puts something else in, and that stock liner literally just goes in the bin or gets given away or something. It's just kind of super wasteful, I think. I'd love to see people just selling boots shell only, so we're not just having all these unused liners getting thrown away or put in the back of cupboards and not used. Like, I'd love to see people getting the shell and then getting the liner that works for them. Some of the other problems that I've seen or encountered with this boot are the compatibility with the sole. It's only compatible with pin bindings. I did actually see a friend of mine the other day who was ski touring out of the Valley Blanche back up towards the Skyway, and this was in the sort of early part of March, so it seemed to be quite a weird thing that he was doing, because you would just ski down to the bottom of the Mer de Glace and take the train down. And afterwards, when I spoke to him, it was because one of his customers had this boot, and he'd taken this boot into a shop to rent some skis, and the rental shop had put him in a Marker King pin binding, which is, you know, tech toe and like a plastic heel clip at the back. And the plastic heel clip, the plastic kind of fixture at the back, basically just did not work with the heel well on this boot. So just pay super good attention to only using this boot in pin bindings. That being said, I've been using this with the ATK Freeraider 15 Evo, and it seems to be a really good matchup with this boot. As I said before, the heel pocket is quite wide. There isn't really anything that you can do about that other than trying to heat up the plastic and pinching the pivot points together, which I'm never that enthusiastic about doing, because it can change how much the boot leans, and it can change the walk mode and everything on the boot. So just kind of have to deal with having that slightly wider heel pocket, and using a zip fit liner, you can actually fill that space by using some cork, and that cork is a good damp material, so it can take out some of the vibrations that you get with a carbon infused plastic like this. Other issues that I am seeing with this boot that could be potential problems for people is longevity. The pivot point on the inside, it sits out proud of the boot, and I'm already seeing some wear on that. from like ski edges coming together. So it could be my terrible technique, but I just think that that's a slightly vulnerable thing that they've done with the pivot point. Hopefully it just kind of looks bad and doesn't actually get any worse or break, because changing a pivot on a boot is not really super easily done. I guess it is possible though if you have the right part and you have the right tools. I do think that this boa is integral to the fit though, so if you're worried about the cable snapping or something happening with that whilst you're out on a long tour, then you might want to try and source those spare parts so you could potentially fix it whilst you're out in the field. But like I said, I haven't had any problems. I haven't heard of any problems. If anybody has heard of any problems, then write a comment down below. Share what you've seen with the community. But yeah, I've been very happy with how this boot skis. I've been very happy with how it tours. It's got a fantastic range of motion. I would really recommend checking this boot out if you think that it fits your foot. One thing I would say is that I did have some pressure on the sort of side here on the like met head of my foot, and that was fixed a little bit after I kind of thermo molded the liners that I was in. And yeah, it feels better now after I've skied in it for a few days. But yeah, maybe that could be like off-putting when you first put the boot on, and actually it could improve over time once you've kind of bedded that liner in a little bit more. But for me though, it's got the right height of toe box, it's got the right width in the forefoot. I didn't have to do any kind of weird punches or blows to this boot, and I just generally have a pretty good fit all around my foot. So that's my thoughts on the Dynafit Ridge Pro boot. If you like that video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, make sure you drop us a follow, and I'll see you in another video.